Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you guys are new here. So for today's video, I did this video last year and I want to do it again this year, but I'm going to be ranking all of the palettes that I tried in 2023 from my least favorite to my absolute favorite. So you guys want to see how many palettes I ranked, what my least favorite was to my most favorite is, well then definitely keep watching. Alrighty guys, so I tried a lot of palettes this year. Last year I tried 91 palettes. This year I tried 98. 98, that is just so insane to me. Like that is just like, what? Why? Why did I try so many? Obviously I have a problem. Like, now I get it. This is my job, but at the same time I'm like, why? Allie, why? If you guys did not see, I'm currently in the middle of a declutter series. Well, I'm towards the end of my declutter series. I just filmed my entire eyeshadow palette collection. If you guys want to go see that, it is live on my channel. It's like a 2-hour long video where I go over all 406 eyeshadow palettes that I have. It's excessive, I know, and yes, we are going to be doing a declutter, but I wanted to quickly do a ranking before we do that because this is going to help me decide whether or not I want to keep some of the palettes I tried this year or should they get decluttered like they were last year. So we're going to go ahead and get this started. I do want to let you guys know that the first maybe like 10, 12 palettes I physically do not own anymore because I did do a declutter of these palettes. Earlier this year, I've been making a goal of myself to do a declutter twice a year where I go through my collection every 6 months, keep what I want, declutter what I haven't used. And I'm actually very proud of how it's been going. But I did declutter majority of the palettes you guys are going to see in the very, very beginning. So coming up first for my least favorite palette that I had tried this year was the Pat McGrath Star Wars palette. Now, I was so excited to get that palette. I literally got it last January. I ordered it in December, but it didn't come until last January. I was super freaking excited for it, and then I got it, and then I realized, because my friend Teresa at the time told me, Allie, you do realize the palette that you bought was already a pre-existing palette. They just put a sticker on it. And I was like, what do you mean? Apparently the Midnight Sun palette had been around for quite some time, and it was also on sale for $70 4 months leading up to the Star Wars launch. Then the second Star Wars launch happened, they immediately upped the price right back up to the normal like $125. I was so upset that I bought it because I thought I was generally getting a real Star Wars palette, but all they did was just slap a sticker on a palette that's been on sale for quite some time, and they called it a day. And then I had the worst customer service trying to return this. I sent them the palette. They kept it for a month. They didn't want to give me my refund, so I had to go through my bank, and I was able to get my money back completely. But that is why it is the worst palette that I tried, because I was just so disappointed by the overall experience that I had with that palette. I couldn't even tell you how it performed anymore, honestly. I'm sure it performed okay. McGrath does have pretty good formula. Like, I won't take that away from them, but just the experience as a whole really put such a distaste in my mouth when it came to that palette. So that is why it is my least favorite palette of the year. So I'm sure it's going to be coming in at 98. But since I have 98 palettes to go through, I'm not going to bother counting like down. I'm just going to maybe put like my little editor moment here for me. That is what is but that is why that one is at my least favorite of the year. Up next, we do have Star Wars Pat McGrath. This is going to be the Sith Seduction. Outside packaging looks really cool, but then the inside color story, first off, this feels so incredibly cheap. This feels like cardboard, not the luxurious feel that I'm normally used to when it comes to Pat McGrath palettes. This feels just super cheap. You can tell this is just a sticker they put on here. And then you have the color story right here. Now, this doesn't scream Sith to me. It just doesn't. It doesn't scream Darth Vader. It doesn't scream Sith. It just is just 5 shimmers kind of put together with Star Wars-esque names, but at the end of the day, this just wasn't doing it for me. And like I said, this whole experience with this collection just really kind of put a distaste in my mouth for this brand and just made me not really a big fan of it. So that is why this is going to be coming in. I think at 97 is the Star Wars Pat McGrath Sith Seduction palette. Up next, we do have the Star Wars. This is going to be the golden one palette. Outside packaging is cute, but then you have, again, the cheap cardboard feel, and then you have the color story on the inside. It kind of looks like C3PO, but at the same time, like, it doesn't. I'm just a ColourPop, and the way that ColourPop does their Star Wars collection, they do like such a great job with it, that this right here was just kind of like, it doesn't really scream C3PO. Like, you have one golden shade, sure, but the rest, no. Just didn't do it for me. Honestly, just didn't do it for me. And for me personally, there's a very good chance I'm going to end up decluttering this collection right here just because I'm never going to use it. Never going to use it. And that is why at number like what? 70, 96, we have the Star Wars. This is going to be the Divine Droid. Now, I will say I do kind of like this color story a little bit more, but again, it doesn't really scream like R2-D2. It should have been like white, red, blue, gray. It doesn't really make sense why it has pink, yellow, gold, purple. Like, what? Like, that didn't make sense to me. You know what I mean? It's a pretty color story, like, all on its own. But, like, as a concept, I just don't think it was executed well. So, that is why at number 96, we do have the Pat McGrath Star Wars. We have the Divine Droid palette. Coming up next, we do have a Shop Miss A palette. Now, I do not have this palette because I did declutter this palette. Honestly, it just didn't really stand out to me. Unfortunately, Shop Miss A was just one of those brands that didn't really stand out to me overall as like a great brand in terms of like the products that I tried. I'm just like, there's some people out there that really do love Shop Miss A, and you can find some really great stuff. I actually really do enjoy their non-makeup stuff. Like, I love their brush cleaner. I love their brush cleaner. I love like their brush pad that you wipe your brush on. Like, there's things I really do like from that brand, but their makeup just wasn't something that really stood out to me. So I did do a whole face of Shop Miss A this year, and I did try this little mini quad palette. It was alright. It was something that stood out to me. I ended up decluttering it because it just wasn't one that I knew I wasn't going to go back to. I'm just really not a big fan of quad palettes, I realized, because realistically, I don't really go to them as much as I thought I would. So that's why it's pretty low on the list. Up next, we do have the Makeup Revolution. This is the Game of Thrones palette. Again, I do not have this palette. I did declutter it this past August. This was actually gifted to me by my good friend Heather Austin. We did a makeup exchange box, and she had gifted me her least favorite palette, which was the Makeup Revolution Game of Thrones palette. Now listen, I know you guys know that I'm not a big Makeup Revolution fan. I'm pretty open about that. I just don't really care for the quality of their products, and I went into this palette kind of open-minded. You know, I'm not a big fan, but sometimes they do shock me. But I will say, like, this was just such a big disappointment. Like, the color story was just everywhere. It didn't really make sense. The formula wasn't bad. Like, the shadows did perform, but it just didn't make sense. From the outside packaging to the color story on the inside, it was kind of just jumbled everywhere. And I was just kind of like a little like, where do I start? Like, where do I start to create a aesthetically pleasing eye look? But then, like, it doesn't look like Game of Thrones to me. Like, it just did not look like Game of Thrones. I thought they really kind of dropped the ball there. So that is why the Makeup Revolution is pretty low on the list, because it's one of those palettes that, like, I definitely would have decluttered even if I purchased it, just because it was just a disappointment all around. Up next, we do have the Melt Cosmetics. This is the Electric Trip palette, and I did not like this palette. I have loved Melt Cosmetics for so long. They were one of my favorite brands for a very long time. And I don't know what happened, but they definitely seem like they reformulated their palettes. So there were some palettes that were great, and there are other palettes that just freaking suck. And I just felt that the Electric Trip palette was just not for me. One, the color story looked too similar to their Day of the Dead collection. And two, the mattes and the shimmers just didn't want to perform. I did declutter this palette. I did get people really upset with me because I did not like the palette, and hey, to each their own. If you love it, I respect that wholeheartedly. You love it, that's amazing. I personally did not like it for my personal taste. I didn't care for the outside packaging. The color story was too similar to all the other previous palettes that they created, and the formula just wasn't there. It was just dry and patchy, and the shimmers were just lackluster compared to how they used to be. They're very dry feeling, and I just don't know what is kind of going on. I really want to love that brand because I used to be such a huge fan, but for some reason I just can't get into it right now. And I don't know, maybe one day they'll create something that I really want to have, but as of right now, that palette to me was so disappointing, and I was like, no, because I really wanted to love that palette, but I just couldn't. Up next, we do have the two little mini Revlon palettes. So this is like, you know, whatever number we're on at this point. Like, see, this is why I stopped counting. This is why I didn't count. But we have these two little mini Revlon palettes. Now, I will say these actually perform nicely. They do have a great formula. They do have a nice formula. I was actually quite taken surprised by it. But I just felt like the color story is just not one for me. These are very, very light in pigment. So I feel like these are just something if you want to have like a makeup, no makeup look. They don't really have as much payoff with what I look for in terms of a color story. They're quads. You can only create so many looks with it. But They're cute and they were fun to play with. The formula was really nice, but I just could not get into the color story. And I know me, realistically, I won't really pick up these palettes again. So these are something I definitely will be decluttering just because I know I'm not going to use them. I'm not. They're not my color story. They're not my cup of tea. And like I said, I'm not really the biggest fan of quads because you can only do so many looks with them. So that is why these are pretty low on the list. Up next, we do have the 2 Game Beauty. These are the Phantom Thieves palettes. And honestly, I wanted to love them. I loved one more than the other, but I don't know. This whole collection just kind of felt off brand to the Game Beauty line. Like I was so used to them doing like their adventure, their fantasy, their victory palette. I was so used to that line and I thought they were going to do a continuation to that story. But then they veered off and did their first ever collab with Phantom Thieves, which I don't really know who they are personally, but I definitely do commend them for having their first collab. So I'm sure that was actually like a lot of work and pressure for them. And they created 2 palettes with this launch. And I just didn't connect to it the way that I have previous Game Beauty palettes. It just didn't really make too much sense for me with their line. And the color story, they were good, but they were okay. But they just were very underwhelming. I was very underwhelmed by this whole collection. So I ended up decluttering both palettes just because I know realistically I won't reach for those palettes the way I would other Game Beauty palettes. And so I let this one go. And that's why these are pretty low on the list. Pretty much any palette that I let go, it's going to be low because like I obviously don't have it for a reason. Up next, we do have the What's Up Beauty. This is the Desert Monsoon palette. And I really don't have anything too bad to say about this. I did declutter it. But for me personally, it was just okay. It was just kind of like a pretty neutral palette with pops of color. The formula was nice, but there was nothing that really stood out to me in terms of this palette. So that's why I did declutter it because I knew I wasn't going to really go for it again just because the color story just wasn't that exciting for me. I did like the formula as my first introduction to the brand. I did like how the formula performed, but it just didn't hold my attention enough. So unfortunately, it is low on the list because of that. Up next, we do have the Alter Ego Coastal palette. Now, I have nothing bad to say about this palette, but the only reason why it's low on the list, I did declutter it because I do have the original version of it. I really do love Alter Ego's formula. They have a phenomenal formula. They create the most amazing dupe palettes at a third of the cost to the original. But I just felt that when it came to their coastal palette, I preferred the original one a little bit more than this one. And I didn't want to have 2 of the same palettes. So I did end up decluttering it because of the fact that I did like the original over this. So while I do think it's a beautiful palette, I just didn't love it as much as the original. So I did declutter it, and it's why it's low on the list. Next, we do the Ace Beauté Floral Collection. Now, I kept 2, but I decluttered 2. Now, one of the color stories, the Begonia one, I thought I was going to love it a lot more than I did, but I don't know. I just couldn't really connect to it as much as I did the other 2, like the Cala and the Flora one. Like, I really love those 2 ones. But the Begonia one, I kind of just liked more of the green and like the gold, but like the red portion of it, I really wasn't a fan. And then we do have the other one, which is the purple palette. Then we do have the other one, which I do think it's pretty, but for me personally, I just don't really gravitate to a pure purple palette. Purple and reds and pinks are like my least favorite colors to work with. I always love how my eyes look when I do play with purple shadows, but like just to me to like want a purple palette, I just don't ever gravitate to it for some reason. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because it can stain, maybe because I find it a little more intimidating. I don't know, but I find myself less gravitated to a purple, red, pink palette over anything else. So that's why these 2 are pretty low on the list. Not because the formula wasn't great, but because I did declutter them, and so I did put them low because it obviously decluttered them for a reason. Up next, we do have the 2 Jungle Book collaborations with Catrice. Now, these are really cute palettes. I was really surprised by the formula when it came to these palettes, but I just felt that these were super cute and I was going to hold on to them just because I do love Disney, but it didn't really justify me keeping the palettes. I didn't really try one per se. I did actually end up passing that along, but the one I did try, I did love. I did think it was a really cute color story, but just wasn't enough for me to want to keep it because I knew realistically I really love the Essence Lion King one over this one, so I did declutter both this past year. So they are good for what they were. Great color stories, good formula. They just weren't interesting enough for me to want to hold on to them, so it's why they are pretty down on the list. All right, moving on to some palettes that I do have to show you guys besides just a picture. But up next, we do have the Nomad Cosmetics Air palette. This is the travel palette, and this to me, I don't know why, I was so disappointed in this collection. And it's not because I don't love Nomad. I really do love Nomad Cosmetics. You guys know that. But there's something about this palette that I just thought would be so lackluster. They created a 6-pan neutral palette. And for them, that's definitely something that's new because they create very, very colorful palettes. So I do respect them coming out with a neutral palette, but for me, this was just so underwhelming. I know realistically for me, I'm not going to really travel with this palette. I do prefer other neutral ones over this one. The color stories was okay. The formula was pretty good. It's just, I found it to be quite boring. The outside packaging really isn't that cute. And then the inside color story, you can only do so many looks with this. Like truly, you can only do so many looks with this. And so I don't know. This to me just wasn't what I was used to when it came to Nomad Cosmetics. I'm used to their bright, colorful, bold palettes. And this one really kind of took me by surprise. And I know that they have to cater to everybody out there, which I do respect. But from someone who does love a lot of color, I was just like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. So yeah, unfortunately, this one is pretty far down, and I wouldn't be surprised if I don't keep it because I just know realistically it's not for me. Up next, we do have the ColourPop Pretty Please palette. I really wanted this palette, and then I got it, and I was like, why did I really want this? Why did I really want this? It was very lackluster in pigment. It's one of those palettes that's great for like the makeup, no makeup look, or you want to have something very light and subtle throughout the day that you can wear to work every day. But for me, I have so many other ColourPop palettes that are just like this one. So I went and bought it, and then I was like, why do I have it? I think the only thing I liked in it was this Super Shock Shadow formula that they had in one of the shades, but everything that, I just really wasn't the biggest fan. So I ended up decluttering that. And I did put it after Nomad just because I still like that one a little bit more than Nomad, but I did declutter it. All right, up next we do have the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Forget Me Not palette. Y'all, I really wanted to love this. I did. And you guys know how much I love Blend Bunny Cosmetics. They are one of my favorite brands out there, along with Glamlight. But this palette, I just could not connect to. And maybe it's because I'm not a makeup artist. I'm not a makeup artist. I'm a makeup enthusiast. I'm a makeup enthusiast who just loves putting on makeup. And I get that she kind of designed this for the makeup artists that are out there because you can use this for blush, bronzer, highlight, and eyeshadow. For me, I will use it for maybe eyeshadow, maybe highlighter. And that's pretty much it because the bronzer shades, I'm kind of like, I don't really see my shades in here too much. I thought mix and matching. Blush, I don't see a blush besides just one peak shade. There's just no way. I don't really like this light pink. I want like a peachy coral blush personally. So for me, I know I won't use it for that. Highlighters, sure. I could use maybe this one and this one for a highlight. The rest I'd have to use for eyeshadow. I find it kind of ugly in my opinion. I said it there. I said it. But I love Maggie and I love the brand so much. I'm trying to be as respectful because I genuinely really know how much love and effort she put into this. I just cannot connect to this one the way I do other Blend Bunny Cosmetics palettes. I wanted to love this, but I just couldn't. I think that if you have other neutral palettes, you really don't need this. And if you were like me who loves color, you're not gonna really like this. Now the formula is great. The formula is fantastic. I won't take that away. But everything else about it, I genuinely I don't pick up this palette. And that's sad. So unfortunately, that's why it's pretty low on the list. Up next, we do have the ColourPop. This is the Winx Club palette. I was shocked when they sent this to me in PR because I genuinely wasn't expecting it. I will say the outside packaging is super cute. The color story on the inside is super cute, but I just feel like I have this palette in so many other ColourPop palettes. Like this reminds me of like the Powerpuff Girls palette. This reminds me of the Fade Into Hued palette. This just reminds me of so many previous ColourPop palettes that I played with, so I don't really feel a connection to it. I don't get the references because unfortunately I never really watched this show. So as fun as it was to get this, I was really shocked that I did. I don't feel anything towards it. I don't get excited when I look at it, and I definitely don't pick it up I definitely don't pick it up with my collection. So it was cute, it was fun, but I just not feeling it. Up next, we do have another ColourPop palette. This is the Flirty Talk palette. Now I got this because I had FOMO. I had fear of missing out when it came to their Valentine's Day collection. And I will say it's a really, really pretty, cute Valentine's Day palette. But for me personally, I don't use these shades. I don't use pinks and reds. Point blank. I just don't. I got it because I wanted to have a Valentine's Day palette, especially because I knew that I was doing a collab with Heather where we were going to be doing ranking our top 10 Valentine's/anti-Valentine's Day palettes. And I knew I had to have something Valentine's Day related because of ColourPop. So I got it because of that. And I just feel like I have not played with it since. And I don't know if I will. I feel like I don't know if I'll play this with this again because I do love ColourPop's formula. I don't care for the pressed glitter that they have in here, but this is a pretty shade, but I I don't know. I only played with like this top section. I won't play with this section down here. I think ColourPop reds tend to stain a little bit too. Up next, now we're starting to move into palettes that I do like. I just prefer other palettes over them. So just because they are going to be low on the list does not mean that they're bad or that I don't love them. I don't like them. I do, but I just like other palettes more. So up next, we do have the Florasis. I don't even know what this palette's called, but we have a Florasis palette right here. Now, first off, I'm going to say this is freaking stunning. Like, this is absolutely stunning. I love the design of this. Love, love, love the design of this. But realistically, I know myself, I'm not going to really pick up this palette for two different reasons. One, these are very light in pigment. They're supposed to be very minimalistic makeup look. Like, you're supposed to have a very minimalistic makeup. It's supposed to give you just very soft, beautiful, effortless glow, glowy makeup, looking so natural and beautiful. I like looking like I have a full face of makeup on. But two, the designs in here are just way too pretty. I'm so scared I'm gonna mess it up. It's like when you have like a pristine book, you want to take such good care of it, or like a video game or something that you're so proud of. You're like, I gotta baby it. It's kind of how I am with these palettes. Just because they're too pretty, I'm like, how do I go in here without messing it up? So while I do really love it, I do really think it's beautiful, and I'm very grateful that I have it. At the same time, I'm like, when am I going to use this? Because it's just too pretty that I don't want to use it. You know what I mean? Up next, we do have the e.l.f. This is the Denim Days eyeshadow palette. First off, I do love this packaging. I think it's super cute with the little tag. And then you open a color store on the inside. You're going to have a cool tone brown and blue eyeshadow palette. It's cool, it's unique. I really did like the eye look that I created when I played with this palette, but I haven't really played with it in a long time, and I don't really know if I will, because I do prefer other palettes that I got this past year over this one, but it definitely was fun to have, and it was very cute, and yeah, the formula wasn't bad. I was surprised by this one. Up next, we do have the Too Faced Italian Spritz palette. Now when it comes to Too Faced, they definitely don't make the palettes aesthetically pleasing with the way they lay everything out, but I was actually really impressed with the formula. I really enjoyed the eye look that I created with this. I love the smell of this palette. It just smells really good, but I just don't love it enough to want to rank it up really high. I think it was fun for what it was. I had fun playing with this. This is a cute summer palette, but I just feel like I do prefer other ones over this one, and knowing me, I'm going to gravitate more towards like the oranges and the maroons and the golds and the browns in this palette over anything else. So while it's definitely fun to play with, I do prefer other ones over this one. Up next, you guys are going to be surprised that this one's going to be pretty low, but at the same time, it's like not surprising that's Koa in the background. We have the Lunar Beauty X Laura Lee Full Fantasy Palette. Now listen, I love both Laura Lee Los Angeles and Lunar Beauty. You guys know that, but this palette to me, it's pretty, but it's just so neutral. And granted, you guys know I have been dipping my toes a lot in neutral palettes. I don't mind them, but I just feel like when it comes to this palette, we have literally seen these shades in both Laura's and both Lunar Beauty and Laura Lee Los Angeles. There's nothing new about this palette. Like, nothing new about this palette. It performs well. There's some pretty colors. I could create some pretty looks with it, but I just feel like I cannot connect to this palette the way I do the brands individually. You know what I mean? Like, it's just too neutral. It's too safe. It's too safe. That's what I'm kind of realizing when it comes to Lunar Beauty and Laura Lee Los Angeles. And I get it because neutral sells. That's where most of the money is. But sometimes I feel like both of them are just too safe when it comes to their color stories. They're too scared to branch out and actually do like a really pigmented, colorful palette. Maybe they feel like it won't do well for the brand. Maybe they feel it just doesn't actually like, appeal to them, and it's just not true to them. And I respect that. But someone like me who just generally really loves color, I like seeing palettes that have color in them. And I just am so tired of seeing them coming out the same color story over and over again. So while I really did enjoy playing with this palette, I love the formula in here. It's just not my favorite from them. Up next, we do have the ABH. We have the Fall Romance palette. Now, the color story in here, it's okay. It's all right. There's nothing too special about it. Like, I did love the shade Crown, Ember, and Twilight, but I felt like Twilight and Thorns were too similar in color. I know a lot of people played with like the purples in here, but again, I don't really play those color stories. This is cute for what it is, but I just feel like I have so many other better fall palettes out there over this one. I did like the formula. I like the eye look that I created with this, but I just felt like, honestly, I could have gone without getting this palette. I could have passed on this palette, but again, I had FOMO. I was scared I was going to miss out on something, so I did pick it up. But looking at it now, a couple months later, not my fave. Up next, we do have the Nomad Cosmetics. We have the Verona palette, and this is a cute palette. Like, I really do like this palette. This is a cute palette. I loved the concept of it. You have like life and death in here. Very, very beautiful. I love the way that this palette opened up and you see the two different color stories. I am just not the biggest fan of that color story side. It's just my personal preference. So I do kind of like this side just a little bit more. I can create really fun looks. And yes, you can definitely mix and match. But I think out of all the Nomad palettes that I tried this year, besides the Air, this was my second to least favorite. Second to least favorite, just because the color story just didn't really strike me as a color story that I'm really the big fan of when it comes to their palettes. So super cute, love the concept, but again, just didn't love it enough to put it up higher in the list. Up next, we do the ColourPop. This is the Naruto palette, and I was really surprised that I got this in PR because I genuinely didn't expect to get it in PR. So shut up, I was actually like, wow, that was really, really cool. But I personally feel like I do like the outside color story, but the inside color story, to me, it looked too much like the Avatar The Last Airbender palette. Like, it looked like they literally took the exact same palette and just put it in this, switched the shade names, switched the layout order, but it's still the same palette. Like, it's still the same palette. So for me, I was really disappointed in ColourPop for not really creating something more original. I know so many people out there who did watch Naruto saw this and was like, where's this? Where's that? Where's this character? Where's this? And so many people were really disappointed in this launch that I think they might have turned their comments off, or they like ignored the comments. I don't really know, but I just felt that it was just not their best work. And I feel like this is kind of like when they slowed down. Is this why they slowed down? I don't know. But for me, out of like all my love for ColourPop, this was like, just wasn't it. Just wasn't it. Up next, we do have the Ultimate Flamingo Frost from NYX Cosmetics. I was so excited to try this because I tried their Ultimate Paradise palette and I really love that palette. So I thought, oh my God, this is going to be the same. And then I tried it and I was like, where's the pigment? Where's the shimmer? It was so lackluster. The color story just isn't as pretty as the other one is. And the mattes did perform well, but the shimmers were just so lackluster. They barely wanted to stay in the lid, and I really had to like go in hard to get some sort of pigment. And I had to use glitter glue. I do kind of judge a palette if I have to use glitter glue. No, so many people out there love using glitter glue, which is great. I like to test it without it, see how well the quality is. And I feel like I really need to have glitter glue to get this to perform. And I don't know, it just wasn't as exciting as the other one was, so it's why it's pretty low on the list. Okay, so up next, we do have another Alter Ego palette. This is the Sakura palette right here, and this is a really pretty palette. You guys never had a chance to see me review this palette, but this is pretty, but it is a dupe to the Natasha Denona Retrogram palette, and I did not like that palette. I did not like the color story. I do feel like this performed a little bit better than that one, but I just couldn't connect to this again, just because it's not really my color story. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just I don't really gravitate to this one as much as I thought I was going to. So while I do prefer this formula over the other one, it just wasn't my favorite in terms of like all the Alter Ego palettes. Up next, we do have the Canon palette from Alter Ego, and this is a really beautiful palette. I did have fun playing with this one because I did not have the Natasha Denona bronze palette, so I really couldn't compare it. I do think this is a really pretty neutral palette, but I just love other Alter Ego ones over this one, so there's nothing wrong with it. I have nothing bad to say about it. I just like more of the other Alter Ego color stories over this one. But it's cute, but not my fave. Up next, I really did like this palette a lot. So the reason why it's not as high is just because, like I said, I do prefer other palettes over this one. But the Essence Lion King palette really took me by surprise. This is the first time I ever tried an Essence eyeshadow palette. But I loved the eye look that I created with this palette. It was so fun. It definitely kind of gave me like a fall vibe to it because of the color story and the way, maybe the way I did my eye look. But it was just a lot of fun. I do have a lot of love for Disney. I was really impressed with the Essence formula because it's my first time playing with this brand in terms of their eyeshadow. And I was quite impressed. Super, super, super cute palette. This was a lot of fun and definitely one I'm going to hold on to. All right, this is where it really starts to get hard for me in terms of ranking because from this point on, I really do love these palettes. So they're just kind of more of what I was just feeling when I was doing my ranking. There's Koa again. Okay, so up next we do have the ColourPop. This is the Alice in Wonderland collection. I really love this collection. I thought they did a fantastic job with this. From the outside packaging of this palette to the inside color story, I just loved everything about this. It was so fun. I love the eye look that I created with this. The shadows performed beautifully. It was just a great overall time for me. I had a great experience. I love the little like watch brush slash clock, that brush slash mirror that came with it. Super, super cute collection. I feel like they did a really good job with the Alice in Wonderland. I was thoroughly impressed. So this was definitely a lot of fun. Really, really hard to rank. But again, I just prefer other palettes over this one. Next, we do have the ColourPop Snow White collection. Again, I was so shocked when they sent this to me in PR because, again, I just don't ever expect it. So we have the Snow White palette. I really loved this palette. I thought they did such a good job from the outside packaging to the beautiful like color story on the inside. Like this to me was, you know, Snow White. Like everything about it. I love the way they did this right here to the actual names, the color story. It was just a really overall beautiful palette. I think ColourPop did a wonderful job with this palette. Really did enjoy this. Very beautiful. Up next, we do have the ABH Cosmos palette. Now, I will say the color story isn't bad. Definitely misleading. Like it looked prettier in photos than you got it in person. You're like, this isn't the same color story that I saw online, but I digress. But I will say, you know, the shadows did perform very well. I really loved this shade right here called Galaxy. I do have such a soft spot for a matte with glitter in it. So much fun. I did like the eye look that I created, but I just felt that this was just a little underwhelming compared to other palettes. But it is cute nonetheless. I did have fun with it, and it has great formula. Up next, we do have Flora Beauty. This is the Cala palette right here. Now, this palette really took me by surprise. I was surprised by how much I love this palette. Like the inside color story is just so freaking pretty. Maybe it's because it's a cool tone neutral and I just really vibe with that. But these four shimmers are what really sold me on this palette because I really loved the way the formula was. And the only thing I didn't like was the way that it's laid out. Like I don't like how skinny this is because it's hard to put my finger in here. But I did like the color story itself. I love the little outside packaging with the flowers in it. But then you open the color story on the inside. It's really pretty. It's what really drew me to this collection. It's why I couldn't let this one go because I really loved the eye look that I created when playing with this palette. Next, we do have the Flora palette from Ace Beauté, and I loved this color story. This looks so much like the Little Ray of Sunshine from ColourPop. You guys know how much I love that palette so much. I love a good fall theme palette. For me, anything that's fall related is going to rank higher in my opinion because it's fall colors. I'm very biased towards fall colors apparently. And I just felt like this was such a fun, beautiful palette to play with. Really got me excited for the fall season, and I just feel like Ace Beauté did a really good job with this one. Really loved it, but of course, I do love other ones more than this one, but I really love this one. Up next, we do have the Glamlight Cosmetics. This is the Chucky palette. First off, I love the 3D Lentacular motion feel. Super beautiful. And then you have the color story on the inside. Now, the color story on the inside is definitely one of those cool tone, dark, deep, grungy palettes. I think this is a really well thought out palette. I think the color story was really beautiful. I do prefer more colorful palettes though over this one. So this one I don't really gravitate to as much as I do other Glamlight palettes. But I do think it was a well executed palette, great color story, great names. And it performed very, very well. I just don't love this one as much as I do other ones, but this was a lot of fun, and I was really surprised by the look that I was really surprised by the look I created this because I don't really play with many dark grungy colors like this. So when I created the look, I was like, oh shit, like this is actually pretty nice. Up next, we do have the Natasha Denona. This is the Xenon palette. Now this palette I wanted to really love as much as I do other Natasha Denona palettes, but I just couldn't love it as much as I wanted to because it's literally the same shades. It's like 50 Shades of Grey in this palette. It's 50 Shades of Grey in this palette. Now it's great for someone who really does love a gray, cool tone color story, but like I feel like they could have done so much more with this collection. They could have created so much more dimension, and they just missed the mark on it. They just missed the mark. The shades are too similar, and the shade called Snowbow right here, this looks pink in the photos, but it's not. It's not pink. It's like a silver, and that was so misleading. I was so upset by that because I thought it was gonna make a really pretty like silvery icy pink, and it just wasn't. So this was my least favorite Natasha Denona palette of the year out of all the other ones I've tried. I wanted more. You would have been better off sticking to like the mini Xenon palette or like the ColourPop Smoke Show palette. I feel like this is definitely one of those palettes you can skip on. Up next, we do have the Legend of Korra palette. Now, I really did enjoy this palette. I thought it was a great second addition to the Avatar Last Airbender. Again, they kind of hit the mark on the color schemes, but do we notice a pattern? This one, again, looks very similar to the Naruto palette, and it does look similar to the Avatar Last Airbender, but I kind of expected to look more like Avatar The Last Airbender because it is a continuation of that series. Naruto, it didn't make sense, but this one I thought was really well executed. I really love the color story. I did love the feature industries. I love when ColourPop does their Super Shock Shadow formulas in their palettes. They're phenomenal. You can create such fun looks with this, and I just thought they did a great job at capturing the essence of Korra, so I enjoy this one. Up next, we do have the Glamlight. This is the Never Sleep Again palette from the Nightmare on Elm Street collection. I really do love the outside color story. I think the outside cover story is just fantastic. I love the lenticular motion. And then the color story on the inside is just, it's pretty, but I just don't gravitate to this palette's color story compared to other palettes, compared to other Glamlight palettes. This one right here, the formula was fantastic. I did like the eye look that it created, but I just don't really play with like reds that much. So it's why like it's not as high, it's not as low, because I do love Glamlight. I love the overall aesthetics of this. I think they really hit the mark, but I just know myself personally, I'm not going to really gravitate to a lot of colors in here. Maybe this light pink ones, this one, and these, but I kind of won't really play with these ones down here. So that's why it's not so high, but it is really pretty. I think Glamlight did a really good job with this one. Up next, we do have the Glamlight Ghost Face palette. Now this is a really pretty color story, but it definitely is a cool tone neutral palette, which I really do appreciate. But again, it's just a lot of grays. It's a lot of grays and silvers, which is fun, but realistically, I won't use these colors compared to other Glamlight palettes, compared to other palettes that I have ahead of this one, because I do like more colorful looks. I did love everything about this palette. I love the eye look that it created, but for me personally, I would have to want to go for like a silver gray green look to use this palette. Otherwise, I'm going to go for more colorful ones first. But I did love everything about this palette. A lot of fun to play with. Love the eye look that it created. But again, I just kind of prefer other Glamlights over this one. Up next, we do have the two Hershey's palettes from Glamlight. So we do have the Milk Chocolate palette right here, which is super cute, very neutral, very basic palette. Really easy to work with. You could wear this palette every single day. But I really did love the Cookies and Cream one right here, because this one has like those icy blues. And I feel like this is great for the winter season. That's why I really do like these palettes, because they're great for winter. You get like an icy blue moment with this, maybe like a cool tone moment with this, which I really do appreciate. So I thought these two palettes really do complement each other, and you can actually like mix and match these two palettes together. But again, I just prefer other ones over this one, but these were so much fun to play with. Up next, we do have the NYX Ultimate Paradise Shock palette. Y'all, this literally was an ultimate shock palette. I was like trying this out just to try it out. Didn't know what to expect, and it really took me by surprise how great this formula was. I really did enjoy the color story. I think this is a perfect fall palette, personally, in my opinion. Now, can you use this every day? Of course you can, but I just feel like the fall vibes in here are where it's at. I really enjoyed the formula. I loved the shimmer. Like this shade in particular really took me by surprise by how pigmented it was. Lasted me all day. Really great palette, and I had a lot of fun with this one. Up next, we do have the Mirage palette from Alter Ego. Again, beautiful palette. This is a dupe to the Empowered palette from Huda Beauty. I absolutely loved this color story. It's a great neutral moment with those pops of gold. Great for the holiday season, but I just feel like I connect other ones a bit more than this one, but I had a lot of fun playing with this. I did actually prefer this one over the Empowered palette. I just feel like the formula was truly incredible. Really did enjoy this one. So it's why it's like pretty decently high on the list, but lower than other ones, because this is where it really starts to get hard for me, because at this point, I'm really loving these palettes. So just know, it's not because I don't love them, it's just because other ones are a little bit better in my opinion. Up next, we do have the Unearthly Cosmetics with Heather Austin. This is the Resurgence palette. Now, I hadn't played with Unearthly in a hot minute until I got this, and I will say the color story is super cute. I think this is a really fun, like Halloween-esque palette. Even though it's not meant to be for Halloween, it definitely kind of reminds me a little bit of Halloween with some of those colors, some of the shade names. But why it's a little bit higher than other ones is because the formula in here was incredible. I did love the eye look that it created, and it was just a lot of fun to play with. And you could do so many different looks with this palette. I think Heather did a really good job. Up next, we do have the Sea Talk palette with Odin Eye Cosmetics. This is a really pretty color story. It really is. It's supposed to be like a blue ocean theme. I definitely feel like this is a great spring summer vibe palette. Super cute. I think Lauren May Beauty did a really good job with this one. But I will say I did kind of prefer the Planet Spirit palette with Betty Jean a little bit over the Sea Talk palette, just because it's a little more of my color story right here. You have those greens, oranges, and yellows, which I really did love. And I also love that there's going to be animals on here, because you guys know I have such a soft spot for animals, especially since I did work at Animal Kingdom for so long. Really did enjoy this. But the one that really took me by surprise out of all three was the Flora Story palette. Like this right here, I don't know why I loved it as much as I did. I think it's because I don't really have a color story like this in my collection. Now, do I have these shades? Of course I do. But I really don't have a color story like this. Like a beautiful cool tone spring vibe with like mints and like icy lavenders. This really took me by surprise. This was my favorite out of the three. I don't know what it is about this, but I just think this color story is just so damn beautiful. I just can't get over how gorgeous this palette is. So that's why this one's ranked higher than the other two, because it's just, my God, it's beautiful. Up next, we do have the Nightshade palette from Gourmand Girls. And I will say this is a beautiful, beautiful color story. Like absolutely beautiful. I think they did such a great job creating this. This definitely reminds me of Halloween. I don't think it really was meant for Halloween, but I definitely get the Halloween vibes, like poison ivy with stuff like that. Very gorgeous color story. The formula in here was incredible. I had a lot of fun playing with this palette, but I do prefer other ones over this one, but this was really, really beautiful. Up next, we do have the Sickly Sweet palette from Blend Bunny Cosmetics. Now, this one definitely took me by surprise. One, I love the outside packaging, super freaking beautiful. The inside color story was definitely kind of like a chaotic mess. Very much a chaotic mess. I didn't really know what to take of it at first. I was very intimidated by this because it's just kind of all over the place. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. However, when I broke it down and did two different eye looks, I really ended up loving this palette. I love the pastel look I did, but I also really enjoyed the Halloween look that I did when playing with this palette. I just feel like if the layout was just a little bit better, it'd be less chaotic, less confusing. I get maybe I translated it to like a candy bowl being thrown together, but I just felt like they missed the mark in terms of the color story layout, but definitely still fun. I really did enjoy the formula. Really took me by surprise. It definitely is one of those fun Halloween palettes, but I just prefer other ones over this one. Up next, we do the Huda Beauty Pretty Grunge palette. Now, this is a cute color story. I did have fun playing with this palette. Really, really pretty, but it definitely looks very similar to a lot of the other palettes that came out this year. And out of all the Huda Beauty palettes, this one is kind of like my least favorite in terms of color story, but I did really enjoy it. I love the formula. I really did love the eye look that I created with it. Very, very fun, cool, very fun, cool tone color story. I just think that there's other prettier palettes in my collection over this one in terms of ranking. Up next, we do have the Blend Bunny Cosmetics. This is the Sugar and Grunge eyeshadow palette. Now, this is definitely a throwback to the 90s, and I really did enjoy the pastel and the grungy feel in this palette. I love the eye look that I created. I love the way this is laid out. I loved the shimmers down here. Very fun, very unique. Maggie did a really good job with this one. Really did love playing with this, but I do prefer one more Blend Bunny palette. I do prefer other Blend Bunny palettes over this one, so that's why it's not as high, but still a beautiful, beautiful palette. Up next, we do have the Odin's Eye Cosmetics Hey Reindeer palette. I love the outside packaging, super freaking cute. But the inside color story, the reason why it's not as high is because it's a pastel summer spring palette. Like, it was supposed to be marketed as a Christmas palette. I don't really get the vibes minus the name and the outside packaging, but the color story on the inside, it just wasn't what I wanted. Like, I wanted something a little bit more. I just felt like it was too springy in my opinion. Didn't really hit the mark in terms of Christmas. So it's why it's not as high, but I still love the formula. I still love the outside packaging. I did like the eye look that I created, but I just wanted more. Up next, we do have the Fantasy Cosmetica. This is the Rogue palette. Now, I really love Fantasy Cosmetica. Their formula is something else, but this is a really beautiful palette. I love the eye look that I created with this palette. I love their shimmers. Their shimmers are just so creamy and buttery, and a lot of them tend to be duochromes and multichromes in here. Very fun palette to play with. I do think that out of all of them, my third favorite, there's two more that overtook this one, so that's why it's not surpassing those one, but it's still pretty high on my list. This one was like really hard for me to rank because I really do love this one. Up next, we do have the Obsession palette from Artitude Cosmetica. This is a beautiful cool tone fall palette, and I feel like you don't really see that many cool tone fall palettes out here. The formula in here is so incredible. I was really impressed with this brand. It's my first time trying them this year. I tried two of their palettes, and their duochromes are just so soft, and they look beautiful, beautiful on the lid. They last you all day. The way they just swatch and shift, like you don't need any sort of glitter glue with them. You just need to lay them down. They're really beautiful formula, and I just really loved everything about this palette in this collection. So this was pretty hard for me to rank again as well because I just really do love this palette. Okay, so up next we do have the Glamlite Scooby-Doo palette. Such a fun palette. I love the outside packaging. And then you open the color story on the inside. This was such a fun color story. They give you so many different options to choose from. I do wish it didn't have as much space between the shadows because I feel like it's a little bit too spaced out, but the formula is incredible. You could do so many different looks with this, and you could actually pair this very, very, very nicely with their other two Scooby-Doo palettes they created last year. But this is just a lot of fun. I really did enjoy playing with this palette. I just, again, prefer other ones a bit more over this, but I think they did a really good job with this one. Up next, we do have the ColourPop. It says, well, up next we do the ColourPop Welcome Foolish Mortals. I loved this palette. I think they did a great job at capturing the essence of the Haunted Mansion ride. Everything about this was really beautiful. Very, very on par for the Haunted Mansion. The color story, the names, the packaging, very beautiful. I think ColourPop did a really good job with this one, and I was actually really impressed with this one. Up next, we do have the Blend Bunny Cosmetica. This is the Machina or the Machina palette, however you want to call it. This actually just launched, and this was the last collaboration that Maggie got to do with her father. And this to me is such a beautiful, beautiful palette. Like, this is kind of a mix of the Surge and Primal mixed into one. I love the way that she laid out this palette. Like, it's so beautiful because you could just create a look just going down the row. Very easy, very beginner friendly, and the formula is just incredible. So while I really do love this, like this particular shade Cyborg, so gorgeous, and I love the eye look I created. There are some other palettes in here that I do prefer just a little bit more, but I did absolutely love this palette. This one was really hard for me to rank because as much as I want to rank this higher, I feel like the other ones I have are just a little bit more colorful, and the other ones I just love just a little bit more. Up next, we do have the Odin's Eye Little Ghost palette with Angelica Nyqvist. This was her collaboration. First off, the outside packaging is absolutely beautiful, and then you open the inside color story. Really, really fun. Now for me, this isn't fully Scream Halloween in this one. This is more like fun house, fun, clown-esque vibes with like how colorful it is. I can see it being like a Halloween when you mix it with the other one, and I love that this one was created to kind of stand all on its own. I love the eye look that it created, but I just wanted a little bit more in terms of like a Halloween vibe, so it's why it's not as high compared to the next one, because that screams a bit more Halloween in my opinion, but this was still really fun, and she did a beautiful job with this collection. Up next, we do have the Trick or Treat palette with Angelica Nyqvist and Odin's Eye Cosmetics. I absolutely love this palette. I think this is a beautiful Halloween inspired palette. I think Angelica really did hit the mark with this, from the shade names to the color story. I really did enjoy this, and it pairs very beautifully with the Ghost palette. Like I said, it could do very well all on its own as well. So it's very hard for me to rank this because I do love Halloween, so it's hard for me not to have Halloween up higher. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. I really did enjoy this one. Up next, we do have the Haunted palette from Gourmand Girls right here. Again, this is another gorgeous color story. This to me just looked a little bit too similar to the Nightshade palette. So while I wanted this to be higher in the list because it is a Haunted palette, Halloween palette, I just feel like this one dropped just a little bit compared to their Spook palette from last year. And it looks a little bit too similar to the Nightshade, where these would really complement each other beautifully. But I wanted just a little bit more in terms of like a really pretty Halloween vibe palette. Very beautiful still. I love the greens. I love the purples and the blacks and a little bit of like the golden sunflower yellow. Very pretty, but yeah, I just wanted a little bit more with the color story. Up next, we do have the Glamlite. This is the Rick and Morty palette right here. I loved this palette. This is so freaking beautiful. And this is like everything you need for like a bright, colorful vibe palette. This is perfect for the spring and summer season because you can create so many different looks with this. You can create an orange look, green look, blue look, purple look. You can mix and match. You could do black, you could do gray. Like, you could do so much with this palette. It offers different variety of shades in here. Really great formula. So much fun. I think Glamlite did such a great job with this collection. I really, really, really did enjoy this one a lot. Up next, this one really took me by surprise how much I really did enjoy this damn palette, but it is the ColourPop That's a taupe palette? Like, what? I preferred this one over Colorful. I was surprised too. And I think the reason why I really love this one is because it's like a perfect, like, neutral palette. Like, I love a good neutral moment. I was obsessed with the ColourPop Going Coconuts for a very long time, and this to me just kind of replaced it just a tad because it is on the cool tone side, which I do really prefer. But there's just something about these shimmers right here that are just, my God, beautiful. It's a very beautiful palette. I really love the look I created with this. This is one of those palettes you can wear every single day. You can dress up, you can dress down, you can wear this in any occasion, and it's going to be a beautiful eye look whatever you create with this. A lot of fun, very easy to work with. I really, really enjoyed this one. Okay, so this is when it really starts to get hard for me because this next collection of palettes, I really love. Like, I mean, like I really, really love. So it's really hard for me to like condense these down the way that I had to, but we gotta get them ranked. Numbers might be off, so that's why I'm not saying the numbers, but we have the Nomad Cosmetics Royal Europe palette. This palette really took me by surprise because I think this is the first time that they ever rolled out with like a duochrome or multi-chromes in their palettes. This whole row is nothing but duochrome and multi-chromes. The formula in here is incredible. These blend out like butter. I mean, like these are so freaking pigmented, so beautiful. You could do so many looks with them, and they pair very, very nicely with the row that it's accompanying. Like, I loved everything about this palette. I love the Alex I created. I love the multi-chrome and duochrome moment. They lasted all day. I love that you can mix and match. It was a very, very well thought out palette, from the color story to the actual layout, just to everything. The mattes in here were so pigmented, and it's just a really gorgeous palette. I had a lot of fun playing with this one. Up next, to do the 5 elemental palettes from Game Beauty, we have the Electro palette, we have the Cairo palette, we have the Dendro palette, we have the Pyro palette, and then we have the Geo palette right here. I absolutely love these palettes. Now, what's so crazy is that I kind of love them together more than separate, because the eye look that I created with these was just so fun. I was really, really impressed with my ability to use all 5 palettes to create a look. I don't know, there's something about this look I was just truly obsessed with, and I did recreate it several times actually off camera because I really did enjoy this, and it was just a lot of fun. So let me show you these. So my favorite out of the 5 is the Geo palette right here. I absolutely love the Geo palette. This is probably one of the best formulas that this brand has ever come out with. I played with quite a few of the Game Beauty palettes, and this one really took me by surprise with how amazing the formula is. They do have some amazing shimmers that are creamy and buttery in here, but when you mix them all together, they just create the most beautiful, beautiful look. So we have the Geo followed by the Pyro, which is my second favorite. And then we do have the Dendro, which is my third favorite from the brand. Then we have the Cairo, followed by the Electro palette right here. So all these palettes create the most beautiful, beautiful, beautiful looks. I really did enjoy playing with these. Formulas really took me by surprise, and these were definitely well worth it in my opinion. If you guys have not picked these up, I highly recommend you guys do so, because these are just so much fun to play with. I really did enjoy these ones. Up next, I do have the Nomad Cosmetics. This is the Ghost Town palette. First off, I absolutely love the outside packaging, but the color story on the inside was just so freaking fun. This is again a cool tone moment, but you can create so many looks with this one. This year is the year of the cool tone shadows, which I really do appreciate, because so many years, so many brands catered to warm tone neutral palettes. This is the year about the cool tone, and I'm so excited because this was such a fun palette to play with. I love the eye look. I love that I got to do I love the eye look. I love that I can do icy blues, like navy blues, greens, a little bit more on the golden copper side. Very pretty, so much to work with. And it's like a Halloween-esque vibe, like a haunted town. And I just really love this palette. Especially the outside packaging, like it was just so freaking cool. Really love that. Up next, we do have the Glam Light. This is the Friday the 13th Camp Crystal Lake palette. One, I love the outside packaging, super freaking beautiful. And then you have the actual palette on the inside, because this is meant to be like a nice little like VHS style tape. Really freaking cool. And then the inside color story is very pretty. This is again like a cool tone swampy vibe palette. Now I kind of gravitate more towards just like this side and this side only. I don't play with the reds and blacks, but like this side is like where I'm kind of gravitated to a lot. I just really love the whole aesthetics of this. I really enjoyed the eye look that I created, because it's like a swamp vibe. I live for like the grungy greens and like these shades right here, and I just love the very front of this. Super freaking cool. Everything about this collection was really awesome, and I just really enjoyed playing with this palette. Up next, we do ColourPop. This is Sage the Day palette. This is such a beautiful palette. Now, I'm going to be a little bit biased to this because I do love green shadow. It's some of my favorite to work with, and this is just such a fun play. This is such a fun, easy palette to play with. I did pick this up at Target, and I just really enjoyed the green eye look that I created with this. I've gone back to this palette several times because I can do like a nice little like minty green moment in everyday eye look. I love when ColourPop has those mattes with glitter in them. So easy to work with. And this is just a very aesthetically pleasing palette. I really, really did enjoy this. I wore this quite often when I first got it. I was really obsessed with this. Very, very beautiful. Next, we do have the Fantasy Cosmetica. This is the Fighter palette. Again, this palette took me by surprise. I just wasn't expecting to love this as much as I did, but there was something about this color story that I truly was obsessed with. Maybe it's the eye look that I created created using this? I don't know, but I just feel like I can use this palette every single day if I wanted to create a really beautiful neutral look. There's something about it that just was so beautiful. I couldn't get over the shade Glory. Love the way that this performed. I also love the way that Blade performed as well. Really pretty. They complement each other so nicely, and I really enjoyed this one. Up next, we do have the I Need a Nude palette from Natasha Denona. This was such a beautiful palette. Like, I really enjoyed this. I use this so much since picking this up because, again, it's another cool tone neutral palette. And there's something about this that was so easy and effortless to work with. I really did enjoy this. This is one of those staples. It's going to be in so many people's collection because you can create so many looks using this. And this is like the perfect everyday palette for so many people out there, and I just really did enjoy this one a lot, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this one. But beautiful formula, beautiful color story. I really enjoyed it. Up next, we do have the Jewels and Gem palette from Odin's Eye Cosmetics. I did really love this palette. I loved the formula in here. These shimmers are like top notch, especially the shade right here called well, it's kind of blocked, Rhapsody. Like, oh my gosh, I lived and breathed for this shade. I also really love the shade called High right here. It's so beautiful. But then I also love this bottom shade right here because this is going to make a duochrome moment that looks almost like the Aurora Borealis. Like the way that it just shifts and changes between like a gold, orange, blue, yellow. Very freaking beautiful. I loved playing with this palette so much. This was hard to rank because the formula in here was just a whole new level for me. Up next, we do have the 1111 collection from ColourPop. You guys are going to see a little theme here for a minute. But the reason why this is really high up is because it's like the best of both. You got to have a warm tone neutral moment, but then you got to have a cool tone neutral moment as well. I really like the fact that you can kind of mix and match when it came to the both. You could either have a warm tone with this side right here or cool tone with this side. And I love that ColourPop gave you the best of both. Performed really beautifully. You can mix and match them, but I just like how you had the best of both worlds in this palette. So much fun to play with. I loved everything about this. I love the eye look, and I just love that if I wanted to have the perfect overall neutral palette between warm and neutral and warm and cool, this is what I'm going to go for. So freaking pretty. But up next, we do the Snow Day palette from Odin's Eye Cosmetics. I love the outside packaging. Super freaking pretty. And the color story on the inside is just so pretty. This is like a pastel version of a Christmas palette. I loved everything about this palette. I ranked it really high in my Christmas ranking because this really does hit the mark what I'm looking for in terms of a Christmas palette. Now, it is more on the pastel side, so it makes it a little bit more fun, a little bit different, but everything about this still just screams Christmas to me. I get such Christmas vibe. I get into the spirit. I really loved how this palette made me feel. I love the way it performed, and I think the color story is overall absolutely beautiful. Up next, we do have the Man-Eater palette. This is the Untamed from Artitude Cosmetics. Love the outside packaging, but the inside color story is what really sold me. Now, granted, it's not going to be a color story that's going to be wowing a lot of people, but the color story in here really took me by surprise between those greens and those golds. I was thoroughly impressed with how beautiful this palette performed. It really took me by surprise because, like I said, it's my first time ever playing with it. And those shimmers in here are just unreal. The way they blended, the way they have some duochrome moments to them. Very easy formula to work with. And I just had way too much fun. And I love the eye look. Very gorgeous. Up next, we do have the Lunar Beauty. This is the Siren Sunset palette right here. The packaging on this was just on a whole new level. I love that you have the moon with mermaid, but on the back, the mermaid is jumping off. Very, very pretty. And at first, I did not think I was going to like this palette. I was like, you know what? This really isn't a color story for me. It's not one that I really gravitate to until I played with it. Until I played with it and I realized how incredible the formula was and how pretty the eye look I created was, I fell in love with it. Like, he created like some duochromes in here, and the duochromes, my gosh, are they absolutely beautiful. I couldn't get over how nicely they performed and how easy you can create different eye looks with this. You do have those neutral moments, but you also have those really colorful moments that you can create such a beautiful eye look with. And I had so much fun. Really took me by surprise when playing with this. That's why it's ranked pretty high, because I still keep gravitating to this palette. I'm so drawn to it, and I really do love this one. Up next, we do have the Blend Bunny Cosmetics. We have the Lure and we have the Trove palette right here. Now, these kind of go hand in hand. So while they are two separate palettes, they do kind of go hand in hand. So first off, we have this gorgeous mermaid vibe palette from Blend Bunny, I just love everything about this palette. The color story, the way it's laid out, the way that it performs. There's something about this that I just really am obsessed with. She not only does she have a beautiful row of pastels, she has a beautiful row of bold colors and of grungy dark colors. And then she has a shimmer row as well. Everything about this palette I'm truly obsessed with. But then when you take this palette and then you pair it with the Trove palette, these are a quad of multi-chromes. And now I'm not the biggest fan of quads. The way that these just go hand in hand, y'all, I can't. This combination of the two is just on a whole new level. The formula, the layout, just everything about this, I truly am obsessed with them. This is one of my favorite Blend Bunny Cosmetics palettes ever that they created. I love pairing these two together, and it was so hard for me to rank them not as high because I do have just ones that are just a little bit better. I do have ones I'm just a little bit more obsessed with, but everything about these two palettes are just truly incredible, and you have to get them as a pair because they pair beautifully as a pair. Up next, we do the Glamlight Nightmare on Elm Street. This is the Freddy Krueger palette. Y'all, this palette is just so beautiful. It's so beautiful, but I'm also really biased because I love green, and there's so much you can do with this palette. You do have those grungy greens in here, and I just love this palette so much. I loved the eye look that I created with this. This is probably going to be one of my favorite grungy green eyeshadow palettes because you could do so many looks with this. It's just beautiful. You could do a green eye look. You could do an everyday eye look. You can do a darker black gray moment. It is just so freaking beautiful. I love everything from the outside packaging to the color story to the names, the concept. This was just an overall well executed palette, and damn, do I love this color story. Up next, we do have the Stone and Rock palette from Odin's Eye Cosmetic. I love this palette again. You're going to see another green eyeshadow palette because, like I said, I'm a little biased to this, but I just loved this color story so much. There's just something about it that I just can't get over how gorgeous this is. I just love those green tones, those olive greens, those diarrhea greens, the light greens, dark greens. There's everything about greens I just truly am obsessed with, and I think this is a beautiful palette. I love the eye look that I created when playing with this. Gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. Up next, we do have the Lost Library from Fantasy Cosmetica. Now, this is 6 little individual holochrome shadows, but these holochromes, y'all, these holochromes are just on a whole new level with pigment. I absolutely am obsessed with the way that these perform. This is probably my favorite individual shadows that I have ever played with. I just love everything about them. You can mix and match them with so many different things out there, and I just feel like these perform so beautifully all on their own, but also just by them all on their own, but just the pigment on these, the shift on these, they last you all day. And I just really wish my camera would pick up how pigmented these truly are and just how gorgeous they are. I was obsessed with this collection, and I keep going back to this, especially with this one particular shade right here. This is my favorite one. I don't even know what this one's called, but it goes from a white to a green to an orange to a gold and yellow. It's so beautiful. Trust me when I say that I am surprised that this palette is ranked as high as it is, because I genuinely did not know what to expect when I first got it. So this is the What's Up Beauty Dragon Eye palette. First off, the outside packaging is just so damn beautiful. I seriously love this outside packaging. So pretty. But then you open the colors from the inside, you're like, this is nothing like the outside packaging. Really disappointed by that. But then when I actually played with it, and I played with their duochromes and multichromes in here, I became obsessed. This shade right here called Scales, this is everything. This goes from a green to a purple, and then when you pair it with the shade called Magic, oh my god, they create a magic combination together. But then you could also add the shade Fire, which really can just enhance the look. But then you can also add the shade called Monster, which really can bring all of it together. And the look that I created looked very similar to the look that you see right here on this palette. It looked so similar that I just became obsessed with this palette. I think this is a really beautiful thought out palette, and I did not give enough credit when I first tried it out. But after I did my eye look and I played with it a bit more, I really did fall in love with this palette. I think it's really beautiful, and it's one I keep going back to time and again. And I think that says a lot. So this is just an overall really good palette, great formula, great color story, and I just absolutely loved the eye looks that I created with this. Up next, we do have the Pete Louise. This is the Droplet of Magic palette. First off, I love the fact that it comes with a little key that you have to use to unlock it. Super freaking cute. What I also really love about this palette is that it's two-sided. So on one side, you do have a nice cool tone gray, graveyard vibes with the greens and the grays. Really, really, really beautiful. But then you open it up to the other side, and you're gonna have those purples and reds right here. So mixing the two together is so fun. I love the fact that with this palette, you get so many different looks that you can create out of this. The formula is just out of this world. If you guys have never tried a P. Louise palette, I'm telling you, the formula is just incredible. I say the color story on this was really pretty. I was so surprised at how much I enjoyed the color story, especially with this palette right here. Like, I was just so in love with this palette right here. This one right here in particular with like those grays and those like minty greens, they pair so beautifully together, and they also complement each other so well. You can mix and match. Overall, great freaking palette. Next, I do have the BH Cosmetics. This is the Optimistic AF palette that Heather sent over to me. Y'all, this color story, I can't. I love a good fall color story, and this is such an easy, beautiful fall palette. Like, the looks that I created with this palette, I'm just truly obsessed with. I love the green, I love the yellows, the oranges, the maroons. Like, you guys know that fall is my favorite time of year, and this truly just hit the mark on a fall palette, and I really became obsessed with the eye look that I created when playing with this palette, and I keep going back to it, and the formula is just incredible too. Like, I was very glad that Heather got this me because I did declutter it long ago, but now I have it back, and I'm just like, damn, she knows me so well. Up next, you probably have my favorite Nomad Cosmetics palette ever, and that is the Okavango Safari Palette 1. The outside packaging is just incredible, but the inside color story, I just truly love. It just reminds me a little bit of fall, but I think the reason why I'm also gravitated to a lot is because it has those greens that I love and like those little bit of like those greens I love. But I think also the reason why I love it so much is because I did work at Animal Kingdom for almost 12 years, and I actually went to Animal Kingdom to film like content for this palette, and I just loved everything. I loved the cause that they were representing. I loved the layout. I loved the fact that it has to do with like animals, and it just reminds me of home. Like, Animal Kingdom will always be my home, and I just really connected to this palette so much. And while it may not be the most thrilling color story out there, this is probably my absolute favorite from this brand, and I've played with this palette quite a bit since getting it, and I really love it. There's something about this palette that I just keep going back to time and time again. All right, guys, we're down to our final 4 palettes. So coming number 4, we do have the P. Louise. This is the Hocus Pocus Regain Focus palette. So on the inside color story, I thought originally I was going to be obsessed with this side right here, because this is kind of like what sold me on this palette initially and why I wanted to have it, because I thought this is like an ultimate Halloween palette with those greens and those purples. Everything about this I wanted. It was like truly like a witch cauldron vibe palette. Really loved this color story. But honestly, when playing with this palette, the one that really took me by surprise was the back. The back was everything that I wanted. This, to me, was the ultimate like fall palette. You have those beautiful yellows, oranges, maroons, and reds and golds, and I just really love this palette. And what I really love about it was I thought this was like the perfect fall to Halloween palette. So you have fall on this side, and then you have Halloween on this side. So you get the best of both. You get Halloween and you get fall, and you guys can mix and match these two together to just create the ultimate like September and October palettes. Like, I just freaking loved everything about these palettes. I love the eye look, and I just think this is such a fun palette. I was really, really glad that I got it because I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, and I'm just, damn, do I love it. Coming in at number 3, this was really hard because number 2 and 3 just have been battling each other nonstop in my head for the last day. But I think I know which one I'm kind of gravitated to just a little bit more. So coming in at number 3, we do have the Natasha Denona. This is the Yucca palette. I loved this color story. I love the eye look that I created with this palette. I love the formula. I've used this palette quite a bit. And the reason why I did get bumped down from 2nd to 3rd is just because of the smell. Honestly, because of the smell. Now, granted, it is not nearly as strong as it once was, but it still has just a tiny bit of hint that there's still is a little something stinky about it that I'm not the biggest fan. But other than the stinkiness, it performed so beautifully. It's a perfect color story of what I'm looking for, with like greens and golds and just everything about this. I genuinely really, really love this palette. I love the eye look because I'm just a little bit biased when it comes to fall and green eye looks, and I couldn't get enough. So the reason why I did get bumped down is, like I said, the smell was just the last bit of factor that I played into why it came in 3rd and not 2nd. Coming in at 2nd place, which really took me by surprise, because this is one of those collections that when I saw this brand announce it, I was like, okay. Like, I did not get excited for. I even told you guys in my new makeup releases that I was like, not really excited about this. But then I played with it, and holy shit, this thing took me by surprise. But coming in at 2nd place, we do have the Glamlight X Garfield collection. I am so surprised with how much I love this damn palette. Like, I did not expect to, because I didn't grow up watching Garfield. Like, I grew up, like, yeah, I read Garfield in the newspaper because it's what helped me learn how to read. But, like, I never watched anything Garfield. I wasn't obsessed with Garfield. But this damn palette has me by the chokehold. And I don't understand why. Like, well, I do understand why. But at the same time, I'm like, why? First off, the packaging is just so freaking cute. I love this packaging. It really does scream Garfield. But the damn color story. It is the color story that sold it for me, because the eye look that I created with this palette, I became obsessed with. I just love a really good fall vibe palette, and this screams fall. You have like those oranges, those yellows, those golds, the maroons, the browns. It is just really pretty, like a periwinkle blue. I loved everything about this. I loved the eye look that I created. I became super obsessed. I've created that eye look twice since I filmed with this collection, because I really, really do love it. And I think that Glamlight just really had something right here with this palette. They didn't even intend for it to be fall. Like, it wasn't meant to be fall. I mean, I think they said they were going to try to come up with it. I think it was supposed to launch around Thanksgiving of 2021. Giselle posted a whole story about this, but it did get pushed back. But I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed, and I'm really surprised by how much I love this damn palette. Really did not expect that, but yeah, coming in number 2 is the Garfield palette. Okay, so coming in at number 1, and this should be no surprise to anyone, but I have the Over Cosmetics collaboration with Allie Dawson. That's me. This is the Falling in Love palette. Y'all, I put so much thought and love into this collection. Like, I always knew that I wanted to create my perfect fall palette. And so when Oprah presented me the opportunity, I was just unbelievably thrilled. So I got to create my idea of the perfect version with yellow, orange, white gold, maroon, and green. I love the shade names that we have between, you know, hayride, bonfire, white pumpkin, sweater weather, and evergreen. I have a bit of my best friend and my husband in here. I have a bit of you guys in here. I have Kaya and Koa that were the lip kits. Like, I loved everything about this collection. I love the campaign. And I was just so nervous when this was launching, because I was like, how are people going to react to this? But so many of you guys said that this was the perfect fall palette. And fall is my favorite time of the year. Like, it truly is my favorite time of the year. And I just really, really, really love this palette. I have used so much of this. I do have backups because I need to have backups, because this is my most well-loved palette, and I just am so proud of what we created together. So I knew that this was always going to be number 1, because this was everything to me, and you guys truly made it incredible. It's still available if you guys do want to get your hands on it. I don't think it's limited edition, but this was just everything to me. So those are all the palettes I tried out this year. I think I said 98, which is a lot. It's a lot of palettes. But obviously my job here on YouTube is to review new makeup for you guys. And whew, did we go through a lot. And I pretty much have videos on almost every single one of these palettes you guys see. They're in videos. They're in videos. So if you guys ever want to see anything, see swatches, see looks, just go through my channel last year. You guys will find videos on all these palettes. But those are all the palettes I tried this year. This is why I love doing this series, because I already know some of the palettes I mentioned, what I'm going to declutter and what I'm going to keep, which is really, really nice. It's why I like doing these palette ranking videos. But let me know down below, what is your least favorite palette that you tried? What is your most favorite palette? Let me know. But that is it for today's video, guys. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please make sure you guys give this video a cheeky thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you guys have not already, because I do post 4 to 5 videos every single week. Make sure you guys head over to my other channels, R for Life. You guys get to see my cool, wonderful adventures, my amazing husband, Corey. And as always, the biggest thank you goes to these beautiful, wonderful page members you guys see over here. Thank you guys so much for everything. And to my subscribers and viewers, thank you guys so much for being here. Whether you guys like this video, you guys thumbs down this video, you guys subscribed, you guys did not subscribe. Either way, thank you guys so much for being here. I love and appreciate each and every single one of you. So with that said, guys, I love you, and I'll see you guys in my very next video.